Imagine working your whole life for something. The land your father gave you, the soil that holds your memories, only to return home one day and find a luxury hotel standing right where your farmhouse once stood. Stick around till the end because what this man did next will leave you speechless. And hey, before we dive in, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live for more stories that prove karma never forgets. The sun rose over Oak Ridge County, casting gold across the rolling fields that once belonged to Samuel Hayes, a quiet, proud black farmer in his late 50s. Samuel had inherited the land from his grandfather, who had fought hard to keep it during times when folks like him weren't welcome to own much at all. For generations, the Hayes farm had stood as a symbol of perseverance, acres of wheat, an old red barn, and a white farmhouse that Samuel built with his own hands. But now, after months away caring for his ailing sister in another state, Samuel was finally returning home. His pickup truck rolled down the familiar dirt road, only something was wrong. The land didn't look right. Where the golden fields once danced stood tall glass walls and polished marble. Cars filled the parking lot. Neon lights read, "The Ridgeview Luxury Hotel, a project of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association." Samuel froze. His fingers trembled as he parked by what used to be his barn. It was gone. All gone. He stepped out slowly, disbelief clouding his eyes. This can't be real. A uniformed security guard approached him. "Sir, this is private property. Hotel guests only." Samuel looked at the man, stunned. "Private property? Son, this was my property." The guard scoffed. "Not according to the HOA records, old man. Now please move along before I have to call the manager." Samuel's heart sank. He felt anger, confusion, and betrayal twisting together inside him. He had paid his taxes, tended his fields, and left only for a few months. How could anyone take what was his? He drove into town, seeking answers. But when he spoke to the county office, they shrugged and handed him a stack of papers. The Oak Ridge HOA filed for redevelopment rights, one clerk said casually. You weren't around to contest it, so they went ahead. Redevelopment rights? Samuel repeated softly. They built a hotel. On my family's grave. No one seemed to care. To them, Samuel was just an old man who had lost his land to progress. But Samuel wasn't just anyone. He was the grandson of Harold Hayes, the man who once outsmarted the same town council that tried to take his land during segregation days. And Harold had taught Samuel one golden rule. Always keep your papers safe, son. Someday they'll try to erase you. That night, Samuel went through his old metal box under the truck seat. And there they were. Original deeds, land rights, and a restrictive clause signed by Harold himself, specifying that no construction or sale could occur without written permission from a Hayes descendant. Samuel's eyes glistened. So they thought they could build on my land, huh? Let's see how far their greed takes them. The next morning, he dressed in his old denim jacket, packed his documents, and walked straight into the Ridgeview Hotel lobby. The manager, a slick man in a tailored suit, frowned at him. Sir, you can't just walk in. Samuel raised his hand calmly. You built this place on my farm. So technically, you're standing in my living room. The lobby went silent. Guests turned. The manager's smirk faded. Samuel's voice was firm, steady, the tone of a man who had been quiet too long. Don't worry, he said, sliding the papers onto the marble counter. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to watch the trap you built for yourselves. When Samuel said he had a trap waiting for the HOA, nobody believed him. But little did they know, every brick of that fancy hotel was sitting on a ticking legal time bomb. Keep watching till the end because what he revealed next left lawyers speechless. And don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live for more stories that prove you should never underestimate a good man with the truth on his side. Samuel sat quietly in the Ridgeview Hotel's grand lobby, watching people move through the space that once held his barn and wheat fields. The smell of perfume and espresso replaced the scent of hay and morning dew. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice echoing through his mind. Patience, boy. Let them think they've won. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. Instead, he took photos of every corner. The construction, the logos, the foundation. Each detail mattered, because he knew what they didn't. The land was never legally transferred. The HOA had built their $1 million project on property that still belonged to him. Later that day, Samuel drove to the county courthouse with his old leather folder of documents. Inside were notarized deeds dating back nearly a century, stamped and sealed. When he placed them on the desk of attorney Carla Mason, her eyes widened. "Mr. Hayes, these are ironclad. The HOA can't legally build without your consent," she said, flipping through the pages in disbelief. Samuel nodded slowly. They thought an old man like me wouldn't fight back. But they forgot my grandfather wrote this land story in ink, not pencil. Carla smiled. "Then it's time we remind them who owns Oak Ridge soil." Together, they filed an emergency injunction to halt all business operations at the Ridgeview Hotel. Within 48 hours, every guest received a notice under their door. The hotel was being shut down pending investigation. The news spread like wildfire. Choa Hotel built on disputed land.
Read the headlines.
The once proud HOA board scrambled, holding emergency meetings and calling lawyers. But the damage was already done. Cameras from local news stations swarmed the parking lot. Samuel, calm as ever, stood before them holding his papers. "This farm belonged to my family for generations," he said to the reporters. "They tried to erase us, but you can't erase roots that run deep." His quiet dignity captured everyone's attention. Even people who didn't know him began rooting for him online. Justice for Samuel started trending locally. Back in the HOA office, the board president, Greg Whitmore, slammed his desk in frustration. How could this happen? Didn't the city approve the construction? His assistant stammered. The city assumed the HOA owned it, but apparently the Hayes clause was never voided. Greg gritted his teeth. Then find a way to fix it. We can't let one man take down a $10 million project. But what Greg didn't know was that Samuel's lawyer had already prepared a full claim for damages, back rent, and environmental restoration fees, a figure that could bankrupt the HOA twice over. Every day they kept the hotel open meant millions in illegal profits under Samuel's property rights. A week later, Samuel received a letter offering him a quick payout. $500,000 to settle quietly, it said. Samuel laughed softly as he folded the paper. $500,000 to forget my grandfather's sweat? No. You don't buy dignity. That evening he stood by his truck overlooking the glowing hotel. He remembered planting trees with his father, fixing the roof after storms, and watching the wheat dance under the sun. They'd poured love into this land, Cora, and no amount of concrete could bury that. Attorney Carla joined him, smiling. They underestimated you, Samuel. He nodded. They underestimated the truth. And then, with a glint of resolve in his eyes, he said, I'm not just getting my land back, Carla. I'm going to make them rebuild what they destroyed, and with their own hands. When one man stands up for what's right, an entire town starts to wake up. But when Samuel Hayes took on the HOA, he didn't just start a lawsuit, he started a revolution. Stay till the end to see how even those who once ignored him began fighting by his side. And hey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where every story proves that truth always finds its voice. The quiet town of Oak Ridge had never seen anything like it. The once proud HOA members, known for their luxury gatherings and exclusive community, now faced protests at their gates. People who had long whispered about their greed were finally speaking out. And at the heart of it all stood Samuel Hayes, calm, steady, and unbroken. It started small. A few local farmers dropped by his house with coffee and pies. We heard what they did to you, Sam, said old Mr. Jenkins. If they could take your land, they could take ours too. Then came the local news. Reporters wanted interviews. Bloggers wrote about the farmer versus the HOA. Within days, Samuel's story had gone viral. On social media, people shared his words. You can't erase roots that run deep. Even the young folks, who once passed by his empty farm without a thought, now gathered outside the courthouse holding signs. Justice for Hayes. And hands off our history. Meanwhile, the HOA board panicked. Their reputation was crumbling. The hotel's investors were furious. You didn't check the deeds? One shouted during a leaked meeting. You built on stolen land. Greg Whitmore, the HOA president, tried to regain control. We'll settle this quietly, he growled. But nothing about this case was quiet anymore. Every word, every file, every email was now under legal review. The arrogance that once fueled the HOA was being dismantled by Samuel's patience and the town's awakening conscience. Samuel didn't march or yell. He simply showed up every day at court hearings, sitting quietly with his documents. His presence spoke louder than anger. At one hearing, Greg finally confronted him. "You're ruining everything we've built here," he hissed. Samuel looked at him calmly. "You mean what I built? You just decorated it with greed." The courtroom fell silent. As the case unfolded, Attorney Carla revealed something shocking. Not only had the HOA bypassed property laws, but they had also used forged signatures to claim construction rights. The town gasped. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. "This isn't just negligence," Carla said firmly. "It's fraud." That one word changed everything. Local businesses that once supported the HOA began pulling out. Contractors refused to work on the hotel. Even employees started quitting, saying they couldn't work on stolen land. The mighty HOA empire was collapsing from within. But something deeper was happening too. The people of Oak Ridge were rediscovering their conscience. They began organizing community meetings, volunteering to restore Samuel's farmland, and collecting donations for his legal battle. What started as one man's fight had become a movement for fairness. One afternoon, Samuel walked through town and saw a group of schoolchildren painting a mural on the wall near the courthouse. It showed a farmer planting seeds under a sign that read, "Justice grows here." His eyes filled with tears. He hadn't realized how far his story had reached, or how much hope it had planted. That night, Samuel sat by the porch of his temporary cabin overlooking the land that was once his farm. The Ridgeview Hotel stood silent under the moonlight, its windows dark, its gates locked by court order. Carla joined him, holding a letter. "Samuel," she said softly, "the judge just approved the preliminary ruling. The land is officially frozen. The HOA can't touch it until the final verdict." Samuel smiled gently. "Good. Let them sit in the shadow of what they stole." Then he looked toward the horizon where the faint outline of his father's old barn once stood. "You were right, Grandpa," he whispered. "They tried to erase us, but the land remembered." The day of judgment finally arrived. The HOA came armed with lawyers and lies, but Samuel Hayes came armed with truth. What happened inside that courtroom left the entire county speechless. Stick around till the end, because this moment is what justice truly looks like. And hey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where real kindness and courage always win in the end. The courthouse in Oak Ridge had never been so full. Reporters packed the aisles, townsfolk lined the back walls, and camera crews waited outside for the verdict that could change everything. At the front sat Samuel Hayes, dressed in his simple denim jacket, a worn hat resting on his knee. He looked calm, like a man who had nothing to prove, only something to protect. Across from him, the HOA's president, Greg Whitmore, adjusted his expensive tie, trying to hide the sweat on his forehead. The judge entered, her gavel echoing through the courtroom. Court is now in session for the case of Hayes versus the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association. Samuel's attorney, Carla Mason, rose first. She spoke with quiet conviction. "Your Honor, my client's family has owned this land for 3 generations. The HOA built a hotel without consent, without title transfer, and with forged documents. We will show evidence that not only proves ownership, but exposes a deliberate attempt to erase history." She placed the old deeds on the table, yellowed with age, signed by Harold Hayes in 1924, and notarized through decades of lawful inheritance. The room went silent. It was as if those papers carried the weight of time itself. Then the HOA's attorney stood up, tall, confident, but nervous. "Your Honor," he began, "the association acted under the belief that the property was abandoned. Our records—" Carla interrupted sharply. "Your records were fabricated." She handed over photocopies of the so-called abandonment notice, the signature clearly mismatched with Samuel's real one. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the judge leaned forward. "Mr. Whitmore, can you explain this?" Greg stammered. I don't recall signing off on that personally." Samuel finally stood. His voice was calm but strong. "You didn't just steal my land. You tried to bury my family's name. This isn't about money. It's about respect and something no contract can buy." His words hung heavy in the air. You could hear the cameras clicking, Capturing the moment, a humble farmer stood taller than the men who tried to crush him. Carla presented more evidence, construction receipts dated before the alleged sale, showing that the HOA had started building months before they even claimed ownership. They never had permission, she declared. They simply assumed power could replace justice. The judge turned to the HOA attorney. "Do you have anything to say?" He swallowed hard. "No, Your Honor." Then came the turning point. An old voice from the back of the courtroom. A retired county clerk stepped forward, holding a faded registry book. "Your Honor," he said, "I worked in this office 40 years. The Hayes deed was never revoked. In fact, the land tax was paid every year by Mr. Samuel Hayes himself." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Greg slumped in his chair, his empire crumbling in real time. The judge struck her gavel. "Order! After reviewing all evidence, this court finds that the property legally and morally belongs to Mr. Samuel Hayes. Furthermore, the Oak Ridge HOA is found guilty of fraudulent documentation and illegal development. They are to vacate the property immediately and pay full restitution for damages and loss." Tears filled Samuel's eyes. The crowd rose in applause. Even the reporters, usually stone-faced, clapped. Justice had spoken, loud, clear, and unbreakable. Greg tried to approach Samuel afterward. "Maybe we can negotiate." Samuel turned to him, eyes steady. "The time for deals passed the moment you lied." Outside, the crowd cheered as Samuel stepped down the courthouse steps. The morning sun hit his face, and for the first time in years he smiled freely. His land, his legacy, and was finally coming home. They took everything from him. His land, his peace, his history. But when Samuel Hayes finally got it all back, he did something no one expected. What he did next turned enemies into witnesses of grace. Stay till the end, because this ending will warm your heart and remind you why kindness is the greatest victory of all. And hey, before we start, make sure you've liked this video and subscribed to Kindness Tales Live, where every story proves that compassion always wins. A month had passed since the courtroom victory, and Oak Ridge County had changed forever. The Ridgeview Hotel stood empty, its polished floors collecting dust, its grand sign slowly fading under the sun. People whispered about how greed had met its downfall, and how one man's patience had rewritten the town's story. But Samuel didn't smile out of pride. He smiled out of peace. The land was his again, though in truth it had always been. The fields stretched quietly under the morning light, just like they did in his grandfather's time. He could almost hear the echo of old laughter, the rhythm of footsteps in the soil. Attorney Carla Mason arrived one morning, handing him the official restoration documents. "It's done, Samuel," she said warmly. "The hotel belongs to you now, every inch of it." Samuel nodded. "Then let's put it to good use." Carla blinked. "You mean you're not demolishing it?" Samuel looked out across the property, where children played on the roadside, their laughter floating through the breeze. "No," he said softly. "The land has suffered enough destruction. It's time it healed." He walked toward the tall glass building that had once symbolized betrayal. Inside, dust particles danced in the sunlight. "We'll turn it into something better, a community center, maybe even a school. A place where people can learn about the value of honesty and hard work." Word spread fast. When the townsfolk heard Samuel wasn't tearing down the hotel, they were stunned. Reporters returned asking why he'd show mercy after everything he'd endured. Samuel simply said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to carry hate in your heart. My grandfather taught me that when you plant bitterness, nothing good grows." Soon volunteers showed up, carpenters, farmers, teachers, all ready to help transform the building. The marble floors were replaced with classrooms, the hotel kitchen turned into a community dining hall, and the luxury suites became shelters for struggling families. Even the HOA members who once mocked Samuel came forward quietly. Greg Whitmore, broken and humbled, approached him one evening. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice trembling, "I lost everything because of my arrogance. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say, I'm sorry." Samuel looked at him for a long moment, then placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. "Son," he said gently, "I already forgave you the day I won. You just needed to forgive yourself." Greg's eyes filled with tears. It was the kind of forgiveness that healed more than pride. It healed a soul. Months later, the Hayes Learning Center opened its doors. A big sign read, "From soil to soul, where the land teaches life." Children ran through the hallways, their laughter echoing where silence once ruled. Farmers held workshops on sustainability. Families gathered to share meals. The land that was once stolen had become a place of giving, exactly what Samuel wanted. One evening, as the sun set over the golden fields, Samuel stood outside the center with Carla. "Do you ever miss the quiet days?" she asked. Samuel smiled. "Sometimes. But this noise," he said, listening to the laughter and chatter around them, "this is the sound of peace, the kind that lasts." He knelt down, scooped a handful of soil and let it fall slowly between his fingers. "My grandfather used to say, 'The earth never forgets who loves it.' I think he was right." Carla nodded, smiling softly. "You turned their greed into grace, Samuel." He looked up at the fading sky. "No," he said quietly. "The land did.